Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for taking time on a busy Thursday morning, afternoon, wherever you are, to join us today. Today we have a very interesting topic, which is calculating ROI on a WAF or WAF, as it was previously called. Now, why this topic is so important is that depending on your organization's size, a WAF implementation can take you maybe a couple of $100 a month to anything upwards of 10,000s or 100,000s of dollars. So with that said, so what does it take to calculate ROI? And then we have Vivek, our VP of products, who will take you through a framework that will possibly help you make a better business case for establishing ROI for a very critical infrastructure and application security software, which is WAP. Okay, so with that, a brief introduction about Indusface. So we are a fast growing, profitable application security company. We only do application security, which is website and API security. So we have three products in our product line. Aptrana, which is our application protection solution, it's a WAP solution. Then Indusface WAS, which is our DAST scanner as well as a penetration testing service. And then we also resell SSL certificates. Coming to compliance, no matter where you are, what your compliance requirements are, we have got you covered. And some of the recognitions that we've received over the years, a couple of them which we are extremely proud of is the Gartner Customer Choice badge that we've been winning for 3 years in a row. So we are in the top right on that quadrant. And then we are also a leader on G2 in the latest badges that we've received. So as discussed before, we have 5,000 customers across 95 countries. And no matter which industry vertical you are in, we have some big names as well as small names, which we can provide you as references in case you're interested in procuring this. These are just a representative sample, and obviously, as what we've discussed before, we have 5,000 plus such customers across the world. So this is something that we've briefly touched upon before. So we've been rated on the top right of the Gartner Peer Insights Cloud WAP report. And we've been doing this for 3 years in a row. And we are the only one in these vendors who have 100% customer recommendation rating. And on the right, we are also listed on Gartner's market guide for Cloud WAP. Finally, we do a detailed research based on all the attacks that we block on Indusface. We have recently released an annual report that covers all more than a trillion requests on applications and APIs posted on Aptrana, and then this includes detailed insights on the kind of attacks, the kind of threat vectors that you need to be wary of. And this has been covered across media, and this is a representative sample. That said, we are moving to today's crux of the topic, where Vivek, our VP of products, will take you through a framework that you can use to essentially create a better business case for WAP in your organization, especially if there are questions around, okay, what is the ROI? Do you need to spend so much on this software and so on? And Vivek has more than 15 years of experience in product management as a whole, and a majority of which is in application and endpoint security. Prior to Indusface, where he's spent close to 8 years now, and prior to that, he's worked in an endpoint security solution called company called WAAP. without further ado, over to you, Vivek, to take the audience through this very interesting and important topic.
Thanks, Mani. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. So let me just share my screen and then we'll get started. Let me know if you can see my screen, Mani. Hello, is my screen visible?
Yes, Vivek. Screen is visible.
Okay, great. Thanks everyone for joining in, and thanks, Mani, for the wonderful introduction. So as Mani said, I'm going to talk about how do you determine the ROI for your WAP investments. So before getting into the crux of the topic, let me give you a quick introduction of what is WAP, right? So WAP is essentially Web Application and API Protection. This is the new term coined for the erstwhile WAF space, right? So WAF has been around for more than 15, 20 years, and it has had multiple avatars. And as more and more new features have been added into the WAF spectrum, it needed a new term, and essentially that's why the WAP term was coined. So WAP generally helps you protect your web application, APIs, provides DDoS protection, bot mitigations, and generally has additional adjacent solutions like CDN scanner and the likes. So with that, let's go into the crux of today's topic. So today we are going to talk about the ROI, right? So return on investment. To understand the return of investment, there are two things that obviously you'll have to get a handle on. One is the cost, determining the cost of your WAP solution. It's not that easy as it sounds, because the WAP pricing model is complicated. There are, depending on the vendors, there are hidden charges and things. So there are reasons why you should be very vigilant about this. I'll walk you through how you should determine the cost for your organization. Then once you have determined the WAP solution, then what is the returns that you will get out of it, right? So how do you determine the results? So these are the two things that we'll be talking about, and eventually you'll have a good handle on how to determine the ROI for WAP in your organization. So with that, let me get started. So the first thing that we are going to talk about is the WAP pricing, right? How do you determine what is the total cost of ownership for WAP for your organization? For this webinar, we are taking into account of cloud WAP, right? So we are not looking at on-premise WAP and everything. We are just concentrating on cloud WAP, and from there we are looking at both the cost and as well as the returns perspective. The reason why you're sticking to cloud WAP is because that's a growing trend, and every market studies nowadays says that cloud WAP is the way to go. Right. So with that, let me get started. Before that, we have a quick poll question. So how confident are you that you will be able to determine the total cost of ownership for WAP in your organization? It's a quick poll. It will start now. So we'll give you about 20 seconds to answer the poll. Just wanted to understand what's your sentiment on this, right? So on 5 seconds, and then we close the poll. Yeah, Manju, you can close the poll and publish the result. Okay, 50% have said somewhat confident, 50% have said not confident. Yeah, this is not surprising to us at all. The WAP space and the pricing model is a bit tedious, and it's not that easy to get through the various layers in it, right? So let me start by explaining how should you go about determining your cost, right? So determining your cost for WAP cost for your organization, you have to go through what we think as 4 steps, right? First, try and understand the pricing model, right? What is the pricing model for the WAP which you are evaluating or shortlisted, right? Different WAPs have different pricing model. Do go into the details of it. What do they mean by it? I will be talking a bit more about it in the next slides. Then the next thing that you need to understand is there will be a lot of features that WAP provide, and many of it could be add-ons, right? Again, these are not very transparent with all the vendors, so you will have to get to the details of it and understand what it means, so that you are able to get to the right cost for your organization. Once you have done this part, then try and understand the scope in your organization. What is the scope for the web? What are the applications that you need to protect? What is your traffic looks like? And all those things you will need to determine to come to the cost. And using all these things, then you will have to come to the total cost of ownership for your organization. So now let's go into details of one or each of these one by one. So first, right, understanding the pricing model. So generally, right, in all cloud webs, right, there will be a tiered model where there will be multiple plans and each plans will have certain features coming with it. So for example, with Aptrana, which is our solution, we have advanced, plus, and premium, and each of these plans have some features, right? So every cloud web mostly has multi-tiered model where there's a feature-based trial. In addition to this, there will be add-ons, because though there are plans and there are certain features around it, there will be some features which might not be part of any of these plans, and that has to be got as an add-on. So this is something that you will have to first talk with your vendor, understand what it is, right? Then once you have understood this, then there comes the pricing lever, right? So generally, the pricing levers will be twofold. One is the license will be issued based on number of applications or number of domains that you want to protect, right? So these are common levers. Either one of these would be used. So this is the license ka lever, right? And then there is also a consumption-based lever, which would eventually be a lever on your traffic, right? How much traffic your application is getting, which you want to protect. The variables on which this is either measured is either on the number of requests that you get through a WAF, or on the total GB, the total traffic size, which is GB, or it could be peak MBBS, right? Peak, the size of the pipe. So essentially, number of requests or size of your request, or the size of the pipe of the request that is coming to you. So these are the three various parameters on which different vendors do pricing models. So for us, we do a per application GB based modeling, right? So but this is something that you need to understand. These are three levers, and the consumption model is not something that all vendors are transparent. They might say that it is unmetered, but eventually, if you have to enable a DDoS feature, then there will be a request-based pricing. So that you might have to go into the layers of it to completely determine what will be your cost to it. So that's the first thing that you will need to understand. Next is understanding the add-ons, right? So there are various features, and as I said, WAF, which has now grown into WAP, has various avatars of it, right? So like a solution like us, we integrate scanner with it, we integrate CDN with it, and we give it as a single solution. Many might not have a scanner. Many might provide scanner as an add-on. They might have API security as an add-on. They might have bot module as a separate add-on. Some will say DDoS protection, but it might be a metered DDoS protection, which eventually means if there's a sudden surge of attack, then there will be a surge pricing that might be there, right? SIEM might be an add-on, SSO might be an add-on. So there are various factors, right? Or origin protection, which is a very important part of your WAF protection, right? If your origin is not completely protected, WAF can be easily bypassed. So it is a must-have feature, but many vendors do give that as an add-on. So you will have to go through the list of add-ons that every vendor provides and determine which of these features are must-have for you, right? That will be an important step that you will need to do. And as part of it, also determine what type of WAF are you trying to look at. Are you trying to get a managed WAF, or are you going to do a normal WAF? If it is WAP and you are going to manage it, then also try and determine what is the cost of you managing that WAP, right? So these are very important decisions that you will have to make. And if a vendor says that they are providing a managed solution, go into the details of what do they mean by the managed solution. Do they do FP monitoring? Do they write the custom rules for you? Or else do you have to continue to write the custom rules? Because all these things matter. And based on that, your cost of ownership is going to change. So go into the depth of the layers that these vendors provide, right? Once you have determined that, now it comes to scoping, doing the scope in your organization, trying to understand what is the scope, right? So now, as a security practitioner, you will need to first determine which all applications are important for you that needs to be brought behind WAF. And you will also have to determine what is the workflow going to look like. Am I going to have a UAT site where changes are going to happen first, see how the WAP is behaving, and then move to production, right? So if that is the case, then you'll need the UAT QA sites also behind WAP. So scope it accordingly. Then once you have determined which are all applications that you need to protect behind WAF, then look at the consumption of these applications, right? As I said, all WAF vendors will have some consumption model. If they are saying they do not have it, they would have bundled it in the total pricing. But there will always be some catch there, right? So you will need to understand what is the traffic of your application. Either it is by GB or request or peak MBBS, based on whatever vendor you are shortlisting on. Do determine that, and then also account for your growth, right? What is the growth going to be in the next 1 year? So that will give you, because otherwise you will see surprises as you grow, because as the business grows, the cost of your WAP solution will also increase. And finally, last but not least, as I said in the previous slide, go through the add-ons and then determine which of these add-ons is a must-have for you. Be clear around, are you going to take a managed WAP or not? If it is a managed WAP, please be clear around what is the services that the vendor is going to provide. Right. So this is how you should go about costing, determining the cost of ownership for your for WAP in your organization. So this is just a sample example that we have taken. This is one of our customers. Obviously, we are not going to name it, but it's an e-commerce site, and they have their main application, and then the API partner API also behind us, and they have also onboarded UAT sites behind us, right? So their general usage is around 2.5 terabytes a month, or something around 30 terabytes a year, and about 1 billion requests, right? So that's kind of the typical organization size that we are taking, and this is the example that I'll be using throughout this framework, right? As I go through my framework of determining the ROI. So if you look at this, and the customer has chosen for the full-fledged, right? They want all the features, which is having the scanner, manual pen testing, unmetered DDoS, complete managed bot solution, fully managed where they want the complete management to be done by us, same origin protection and the likes. So, and if you look at our plan, if they have chosen our premium most plan, the premium plan, and most of these are, or nearly all of these are part of the plan, right? There are no additional add-ons that they will need to correct. It is part of the plan, and it is transparent. When you look at the competition in different vendors in the space, this might not be as transparent. So you will have to go into the details. They might say they have a managed WAP, but then they might not be doing the false positive monitoring for you. They might not go to the extent of writing custom rules for you. So you'll need to determine those and talk to them about that. They might not have a scanner. If they have a scanner, it might be an add-on. Some might say DDoS as it's not an unmetered DDoS, so there will be surge pricing, right? CDN might be included, but single sign-on, SIM, origin protection, all these things might become an add-on. So that's typically how the vendor space works in this, and you will have to go into the crux of these things, right? And typically, the cost of ownership for an organization of this size and these applications, it will be around 50 to 20K for us. And typically for our competition, it will be around 50 to 70K, right? If they are choosing for managed service and everything, all right? So that's how the costing works. I hope I've been able
So
to.
Vivek,
Yes.
looks like it's a good idea to first research add-ons and then go for pricing.
Yes, that's very important, right? Because uh, you need to research the add-on of the vendor you have shortlisted. Then you will have to map it to your business requirement, right? Your organization requirement. And sometimes certain things are very subtle, like the origin protection, right? You might not even understand what origin protection is, but once you go into the details of it, it will become like, how can I live without that, right? So you will have to go into the details of it and understand what is required before you determine the total cost of ownership. Otherwise, you will find it surprising. You might get an onboard and vendor, then slowly as your need comes, the price will keep creeping, right? So please be upfront about this and understand all these things.
I
So
think it's also true about API security, right? So the
yeah, it is.
RPS,
So from that perspective, yes, it is true for both web applications and APIs. But even in both these cases, what I'm talking about, WAP protects both web application and APIs, right? So either you're trying to protect the API host or web application. Even in this case, the example that I've taken, it's an web, the customer has a web application behind them. He has an API host. The API is serving his partner network and then a UAT site. So yes, the same logic applies either you are onboarding a web application or APIs or both, right? So that's how. So yeah, so now once you have determined the cost of your WAP, right? Now let's look at how you're going to determine the ROI. And we are going to talk it from the framework our customer has chosen a managed WAP like Aptrana, and I'm going to talk it from the perspective of Aptrana. If you have selected Aptrana, what is the ROI you are going to get? And you will have to cross-check it with any other vendors that you have shortlisted, right? So first thing, right? So what are the factors that you have to consider when you are trying to do the ROI calculation? So there are some multiple factors that you have to consider, right? First is the infrastructure cost savings. Why do you get the infrastructure cost saving? Because WAP is inline to your application and it is first blocking your malicious requests. CDN will be enabled in most of in these WAP solutions, like in Aptrana, CDN comes by default. And that helps in caching, right? And because caching and requests are served from the CDN, those requests will not reach your infrastructure at all. So there is a huge infrastructure saving that will come in just because you have enabled WAP and CDN in place. The next thing that you will have to look at it is from the managed service perspective, right? Okay, if you have determined what is this is the web vendor and you have to onboard the applications, there is a work there, right? You will have to onboard applications. You will have to monitor the application for false positives. You will have to fine tune the applications to ensure there are no false positives, move it to block mode. All these things are activities which either if it is a managed WAP like us, Aptrana, the vendor will do it. But in most of the vendors would not do this. So you will have to build your own team. But if you are using Aptrana, you don't have to have that team. And there is a cost saving that comes because of that. Then what about continuous monitoring, right? Who is going to do the monitoring for you? If it is a managed WAP like Aptrana, we will do the 24/7 monitoring for us. So you would not have to, there are various activities. We are looking at the anomalies that is happening, increase in surge in attacks, then taking any mitigation actions that is needed, looking at the security posture, change in security posture, fine-tuning your WAP posture accordingly. So all these activities are continuous activity that has to be done 24/7. So if you do not rely on the managed WAP to do it, then you'll have to build a team, which again has its own cost. So with a vendor like Aptrana, you will save that, right? Then then the other thing is which is very specific to Aptrana is the risk-based protection that we provide. So because we provide a risk-based protection, you can identify the vulnerabilities that are there in the application and then ensure that those are protected in WAP. And we provide a complete managed WAP. So if there are vulnerabilities that are not protected by default rules, we will write the rules for you. And we have recently released a feature called Swift Comply, where customers can request for Swift Comply for any application, and all the vulnerabilities that can be patched in WAP will be done within 3 days. This eventually means that you are saving a lot of time. in your project delivery, right? So if there's a new feature coming up and you go through a security testing and there is vulnerabilities, you cannot release it. So that cost delays and that has a business impact. We are saving you from all those losses, right? So that is another saving that you will have to look at. Then you will have to look at what is the business continuity risk cost that you will have if you do not have WAP in place and there is application downtime. And last but not least, God forbidden, if WAP is not there and there is a breach, then what is the cost to your organization when that breach happens? So these are the various factors that you will have to look at before to come to a understanding of what is the ROI for your WAP investment. So what we have done is we have also created a calculator with all these factors, which we and to the e-commerce example, I have put in certain values, and then we have determining the cost. So what I will do now is I'll walk you through each of these factors and how we have come to the ROI calculation, and which will help you with a framework which you can use in future for ROI calculations. So first, before going into that, a quick poll question again. In your organization, do you have WAP? And if you have WAP, are you able to justify the cost incurred to your management? Right. So the poll will start now. Manju, can you start the poll? Yeah. So you'll have again 20 seconds to do it. Just wanted to understand how clear are you on the ROI of WAP currently before we go into the framework. So another 5 seconds.
Also, while we get the results, I think, Vivek, the importance of this framework is that security leaders typically tend to use breach cost as a way to get ROI, but unless an organization faces a breach, it is quickly brushed under the rug.
Correct.
And and that is just one of the 6 factors that we have in this framework.
Yes.
So what we have is more comprehensive.
Correct. So it's good. About 50% have said that there's a leadership understands it, which is a good sign, which eventually means that people understand the WAP space better. But that said, the new framework that we are, or the framework that we are presenting here will help you better justify the investments and how you have to look when we are evaluating a WAP vendor. Right. So first thing is understanding the infrastructure cost. So as I said, when you start an infrastructure cost, there are traffic that will not reach your infrastructure because there is a WAP in place. In the typical example of the e-commerce site that we have taken it as, what we see is there are about 100 million requests. 100 million requests that will block in a year typically, and the size of that might be around 5 TB. And in total, there might be about 30 TB of traffic that is going to a through the application over the year, right? And now when there's a app runner in place where we provide a highly available solution, what happens is all these malicious requests will be blocked, which eventually means there will be about $1,000 savings a year. Taking that every GB might be at 20 cents, will cost you 20 cents. This is a typical example, right? If you're on AWS, just the data out costs you 8 to 10 cents, right? Then you might be using additional services like NAT and various things. So eventually the loaded cost of a GB will be anywhere between 15 to 20 cents. And that's what we have used to do the calculation of this, right? So around, so there'll be block, and because the blocks are stopped, you will be saving about $1,000. And then if CDN is enabled, typically in an e-commerce site, the caching will be at 90, minimum at 85 to 90%, and might go up to 95 to 98% depending on the application. So just because of caching and those requests not being served from your infrastructure, but served from the WAP infrastructure like AppRunner, you will have additional another savings of 9,000. So typically, in the example that we are taking, they will get a savings of about 10,000 a year just from the infrastructure cost savings. So the next item is the onboarding, right? So when you are onboarding a site, you'll have to onboard the application. You should fine-tune the settings. You should monitor the site for false positives, make any changes as needed, write the custom rules. All these things has to be done by, if you're not having a managed web like Aptrana, it has to be done by somebody in your organization. This would take, for each application, we estimate it will take about 40 to 80 hours. Depending on the size of the application, the complexity of the application, it might vary, but on an average, it might take something around this. So the approximate cost that we have is about $1,800 per app, saying that the resource cost might be around $30 an app, $30 an hour, sorry, right? So that's the cost that you will have just for onboarding an application behind Aptrana. Now, if you behind a WAP solution, now if you have Aptrana, the onboarding happens in minutes, right? And the blocking starts from day zero. We have rules which are fine-tuned for false positive, which will start protecting it from day zero. And then our team will monitor the other rules, ensure there are no false positives, write the custom rules as necessary. And these custom rules are backed by SLA. So essentially, it will be done within a stipulated time frame, ensuring that you do not have to have this resource within your organization to onboard and fine-tune the WAP. This eventually means for about the size, about three or four applications that the e-commerce company example that we are taking, they will save about $5,000, right? The next big piece is the crux of it, right? You have a WAP now, but it's not just a WAP done, right? There will be continuous monitoring that is required. Your applications keep changing. Your security posture, the industry security posters keep changing. Somebody needs to monitor, ensure that these rules are written to move with the security posture of the industry, right? So the WAP posture has to keep changing. As the application changes, FPs can happen. You have to monitor it, change it. Attacks can happen at any time. Somebody has to keep monitoring and see that if there is any optimization that needs to be taken, any new mitigation techniques that needs to be done. When there's there's a scanner, there could be vulnerabilities, but the vulnerabilities could have FP. Somebody has to remove the false positive and tell you which is the actual vulnerability so that that can be fixed. So, and all these activities are as a constant process, right? It is a continuous process that you would need a 24/7 team in your organization if you are serious about your WAP, which would eventually mean you will need at least a 3-person team. And even if you take a cost of about just $60,000 a year, you are looking at a $180,000 cost. Obviously, this team might be able to handle up to 10 applications, but that said, you will need a minimum team size of 3 to continue to monitor this, right? Which is a huge cost. Now with a managed WAP like us, where we take care of the entire ownership of your WAP, right? Starting from zero-day protection into ensuring the looking at the security landscape, how it is changing, looking at how new rules to be written. Even the new rules are looked for false positives. We remove the false positives immediately and ensure that there are no hindrance to your application, the legitimate traffics. All these things we do by default as part of our base premium plans, right? So this is inbuilt. The entire solution is built. So this means that you do not have to have this big team, or which is costing you about $180,000 a year, which eventually becomes a saving for you as you go into the year with the WAP managed WAP like Aptron. The another major thing, this is a core USP of us, is our risk-based protection. And as I said, we help you identify the vulnerabilities and then protect. And we have recently released Swift Comply, which again I talked about, which will help you protect these vulnerabilities within 3 days, right? That's the important part, right? Which eventually means you have a project, if the project is getting delayed, that has a cost. On an industry average, we saw some stats where such project delays adds to about $2,500 a day as on an average, right? So, and there are about 55 vulnerabilities minimum that are seen in any application in a year. So this eventually means there will be a delay of about 20 to 30 days. And with app runner, that delay is completely removed, which eventually means we are enabling your business to move fast, grow faster. And that being very conservative, we can say that we will save you about $50,000 a year, right? And this could be more also depending on your organization and applications. The other factor that we have to talk about is the business continuity. So if the WAP is not in place, your application can go down. And if your application goes down, what is the cost associated with it? Industry stats says that an application goes down at least 25 minutes in a year. But AppRunner provides you a 99.999% guarantee, which means an SLA backed with penalty, we guarantee you that your application will not be down more than 5 minutes, which eventually means a savings of about 80%, right? 80% from the time. This is, again, backed by SLA, right? But generally, there is no downtime. And most of our applications, they remain 100% up all through the year. This eventually means you are saving the cost that you will incur when there is a downtime. And every downtime on an average costs you about $1,000, which eventually means you save about $20,000 a year from the opportunity cost perspective. Last but not least is a breach cost. Generally, when everybody talks about ROI, this is the only part they'll talk about. But whereas this is one piece of the puzzle, yes, God forbidden, if a breach happens, there is a huge cost that can happen. So when a breach happens, there are various factors that can happen. That it could be a ransomware demand because of the breach. There could be compliance fines based on the industry that you're working on. There could be restoration costs depending on what the breach was. There could be a brand value risk or a customer risk also. Each of these values that we are given are indicated averages when such a breach happens. Obviously, not all breaches will go through all these things. Some breach might be just minimal and all those things, right? So we have to do an average. And on an average, what we say is an organization can say that at least there will be if a breach happens, there will be a risk of $50,000, right? $50,000. And it's a well-known fact that every organization goes through a breach at least once a year, right? So that's another saving of about $50,000 a year. So in total, when you're looking for the savings, for example, e-commerce company, across all these factors, what you save is about $300,000 a year, right? Which eventually means your WAP investment is something between 15 to 20K, and your return on investment, being very conservative, is around $300,000, right? The calculation that we have done is on the conservative side. The breach cost can be more, the downtime cost can be more. Your managed service might cost you more than $200,000 or $180,000 a year. What we have tried to do is put the most conservative numbers and then see what is your return. And even with the conservative numbers, your return of investment is around 20 times, right? You have a 20 times returns. That's what we see. So as I said before, we have this calculator. I'm using this calculator is what I have derived. This calculator allows you to change various values as you want to, and change these numbers. And based on these numbers, you will be able to see the final value of your total cost, right? This calculator will be available for you post this webinar, and we will also share it to you over the email. And we think this framework will help you understand the WAP ROI better. So a quick poll question before we go into the final slides of this webinar is, are you currently evaluating any WAP, or are you looking at replacement of WAP in the near future? The poll will start now. Okay, this poll, because this is the final poll, we'll keep it open and we'll go to the final slides. So you can answer this poll as you find time. So I'm going to the last slide. So before I end this webinar, I want to leave you with what we do as Aptrana. So Aptrana, as I already said, is a WAP platform. We are the only vendor who provides a comprehensive WAP platform for protecting a web application and APIs. And the reason why we call it comprehensive is because we are the only vendor who start from discovery, because there are you as a security vendor who might know that these are certain applications, but you might not know the entire attack surface of your organization. So we start with asset discovery, identify all the assets that are there in your organization. Then we allow you to onboard those assets into the WAP platform. And we would do the risk detection, identify the vulnerabilities that are there in your application, take those, right? The protection starts from day zero without any FPs, because we are doing the managed service. We ensure there are no FPs, and all your vulnerabilities that can be protected by WAP is protected immediately backed by SLAs, right? With the Swift comply, all these vulnerabilities can be protected within 3 days, right, at max. And last but not least, we have also CDN bundled in, ensuring that you are not compromising speed for security. And obviously, this CDN also helps you in the cost returns ROI perspective. So Aptrana is the most comprehensive WAP solution that is around there in the market, and it has been backed by our customers also, who have given us raving reviews in the Gartner Peer Insight reports, which has made us the customer choice 3 years running. With that, I come to the end of my presentation, and we are open for questions. I know it's nearing the end of the time that was allotted for this webinar, but still, I'm open for questions, and I will be happy to answer as you are.
Yeah, we have a Q&A button at the bottom. Please use that to answer any questions that you might have. Meanwhile, I think, so one question which is very relevant is, so what all questions do we ask for WAP?
So, I think that's what I was trying to answer the entire day. So first, as I said in the beginning of it, right, the first question that you need to ask is clearly understand the pricing model. What are the basic plans? What are the plans? What features do you get as a plans? What are your add-ons, right? And understand what do they mean by the add-ons. And then determine what is the feature list that they have. And if you're choosing the managed WAP, obviously go into the details of what is the managed services that they provide. Obviously, you will have to also check the efficacy of all the WAP solutions. That comes by default. I'm not going into the efficacy of it. That anyway has to be evaluated. For like in Aptrana, we give a 15-day free trial. So you can onboard the application, do a trial, do whatever testing you need to understand the efficacy of your WAP before moving on to going into the buying decision, right? So that's how I would suggest you should go about evaluating a WAP solution.
The next question is, what is unmetered DDoS?
So unmetered DDoS means when there is DDoS is what? There's a spike of attacks, right? And you are essentially sending legitimate requests a lot of time so that your server gets clogged up and you're not able to serve legitimate traffic, right? So now this eventually means there's a spike in traffic. So generally you might have generally 100 requests, parallel requests that is coming in. Suddenly you might get 10,000 parallel requests. So when the search happens and it has been determined as DDoS, ask the customer to pay for it, right? Which is what is unmetered DDoS, right? Because when we say unmetered DDoS, when it is determined as a DDoS and there's a surge and attack, we block it and we do not pass the cost to the customers. There will be those blocks will not be charged, right? So we charge only for the clean traffic. Whereas there will be some some vendors who might have a peak MBBS. You might have to determine, okay, I'm 20 MBBS, right? And then there is a sudden surge. Beyond the surge, there will be surge pricing kicking in, right? And you will have to pay for that also. Though they might block it, but there is a surge price and there's extra escalation of cost that you will have to pay to the WAP vendor. So that's the difference between unmetered and metered DDoS.
Then there is this next question on what about SIEM integration or services?
So SIM integration is, I mean, all the WAP vendors provide SIM integration, including us. Many would provide it as an add-on, including us, we provide it as an add-on, but it will be a nominal cost. But you should, again, if you need SIM integration, please do talk to your vendor before signing up, because they will give you the right pricing accordingly.
Okay. Yeah, I think with that we are at the end of the webinar. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on a Thursday morning, afternoon, wherever you are. We'll share the webinar presentation, the recording, as well as the ROI calculator in a follow-up email. Yeah, as anyways, if you have any questions, reach out to us, and then we'll answer them. And by the way, we run these monthly webinars. So please subscribe to our newsletter so that you can get notified on all these topics. Thanks so much and have a great rest of the day. And yeah, bye-bye.